Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast of Not the Worst Team in Premier League History. In Southampton on the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Greg Elliott, and today we have a full cohort joined by my good friends and wonderful co-hosts. Oscar, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, thank you.
Zach, how you doing, mate?
I feel absolutely terrible. I watched a horrific game of football, but I'm happy because we're no longer, statistically, that's all that actually matters, the worst team in Premier League history. Because we know we've been poor this season, but in 10 years' time, when people look back on our season, they're not going to remember that because Derby County are still the statistically worst team in Premier League history.
Well, I'm sure that is not going to be the only talk we have of statistics on the this evening. We are recording on Saturday night, fresh off of a trip to St Mary's. And yeah, what an awful game of football. I mean, never have I felt better about how bad a game of football was. But
True.
Man, that was some suffering. That was...
Seeing the lineup on its own was a indication. I was like, well, every time we've played without a striker's always worked out really well for us. And I can think about the first time we did it. It was the Bournemouth game with Maxwell Cornet. And I was just like, oh, no. But does this mean they know what they're doing? I feel like, no. I reposted the clip of me in the preview talking about how the optimal outcome for this game was a 0-0 draw. That was my like perfect outcome. And I was like, maybe if we put 11 men behind the ball and they try and keep out the net, we could do something. I didn't think they would take that quite as literally as they did.
But we've got to be honest, right? We've had some calls in the last week from some members of the fan base to have Jose Mourinho in charge next season. And we had a preview today of what that might look like.
Oh, no, because So what do we think of the lineups today? Just that. Let's try and keep on topic for a little bit. Obviously, no striker was a bit not as surprising as I'd have liked it to be. Kyle Walker-Peters apparently out due to illness. I heard.
Okay,
completely.
I haven't heard anything. So that's
good. I don't know how good the commentary team are in the coverage that I listen to in my bunker in New Zealand. So. Either way, it was a bit weird to be like, ooh, you're putting James Bree up against some tough characters and Wellington, who's not played in a while. It worked.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I looked at the lineup and I think my exact reaction was, that's a weird lineup. Certainly are 11 players on a pitch. None of them play as strikers. One of them plays as a winger. Dibbling, I guess, has been playing winger for us this season, sort of, but I'd probably label him more as a number 10. Are we playing like some false 9 option? And when I was like, are we putting Stevens up front and dropping to a back 4? And yeah, we didn't do that. We just a classic 5-6.
It was just a shape, mate. There was 11 guys in a row. Yeah. That's all that was.
To be fair, proof's in the pudding. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but you got the point. Don't matter how you set up. We could have put Tulpour in goal if we'd have got the point. I would have taken it.
Exactly, and I think the fact that they're so mad about it, like I have never seen such a reaction to us getting a draw that would result in an opposition player essentially going on a rant saying we played football against, and I'm pretty sure I've heard like this exact transcript from interviews that have been taken place in the past with similar games and similar teams that have essentially played hoofball.
I mean, historically, Pep Guardiola hates playing against Southampton, and he is quite vocal on the record whenever he's asked in interviews, and he's like, "Oh, Southampton, so it should be an easy win." He's like, "Are you having a laugh?" Like,
it is weird.
We do seem to be a bit of a bogey team for them, for whatever reason.
They've scored 1 goal against us this season. In the 2 matches they've played against us, they have scored once.
Does that make them the lowest scoring team at St Mary's, or like just in general all season?
I want to
I
say
can't think of another team that we haven't had clean sheets.
I can't think of another clean sheet we've had.
No.
Again, that's why I said that was farcical.
Right? We beat Everton 1-0 and we haven't played them yet, so they might score less goals against us.
Yeah, I mean, considering their result today, probably not. But there we are. we live in hope, right?
We're all about spoiling parties. Man City wanted to come and play football for 90 minutes, and we had different ideas. And
we've given Newcastle a little bit of a boost. We've upset the City fans.
It was very clear from the lineup and from the get-go that we were playing to get a 0-0 draw. That was the only outcome with the players on the pitch. Like, fine, we're not going to score a goal, but you're not going to either, and we're going to do everything in our power to make that the case. And we did. We stuck bodies on the line. We put people in the way. Sulemana did exactly what he was supposed to. He got on the ball and made life difficult for the two defenders that were consistently on him. Like, he had no option whatsoever when the ball got to him. But yeah, it was horrible to watch. But
it's one of those three managers since Hasenhüttl, really, and even then I wouldn't say we were solid. We've gone through. This goes to your thing about philosophies. We've had three different managers with very succinct philosophies come in, yet none of them been able to organise a defence properly. And all of a sudden, an interim manager comes in. Look, I can organise a defence properly.
It just requires 11 players.
Yeah, that's the issue. The problem is that he can organise enough defence properly, but apparently we can either pick one thing or the other. We can either attack or we can defend. We can never do both. That is shown by, and we were talking about this before we started recording, because if you go through the BBC News website, you can see the heat map and the statistics of today's the
match momentum.
And the graph, you see the brief seconds that we had the ball. If you look at the table view,
had a deflected shot that went out for a corner, took the corner, and it ended up back at Ramsdale's feet.
That was a 3-minute period.
And I think at that point, I actually texted you, and I think my exact words were, well, that's the attacking phase of the game done.
That is the exact words you said. At 16:29, that's the attacking phase of our game done. This is fine. But if we blank concede in stoppage time again, I swear...
Yeah, well, that was the feel that I had, right? And that only worsened when the 7 minutes went up.
Oh, that was a horrible, horrible moment. That I don't know where that came from either. Like, I get they had a couple of free kicks, but actually, to be fair, maybe we forgot that's probably where it came from.
Yeah,
was the sheer amount of set pieces. But we didn't concede for one. There were a couple
of injuries as well, and Wellington went down for a bit and had to go off to the side, and someone else went off with a head injury and had to wait to come back on. I can't remember who. So yeah, there were a couple of stoppages, to be fair. It just felt like we'd played 400 minutes of football because it was horrible to watch. It's like being a Burnley fan.
You're not wrong. But
all right. Well, we'll talk about it more. We'll try and get back to the structure, and we'll try and talk about the first half. But first, a message from our partners at Bionic.
Your body is unique, and Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bionic, the world's most personalised supplements. Bionic provide 100% tailor-made supplements, designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimize your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN 2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bionic. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now. Your body.
Okay, and we are back. Zach, do you remember any key moments from the first half at all? Because
there were no key moments for us. Apart from keeping goals out, I had to look at the defensive stats, right? For the entire game, we made a total of 52 clearances, 28 of those being headed clearances. We also had a clearance off the line at one point, which I think was towards the end.
Yeah,
and we also had one error leading to shots, which,
that's low for us. That's bad. Good.
Yeah, so that's really low for us. But no, the problem was it was just it was sat there being terrified for a vast majority of the first half and being absolutely surprised. We're like, right, well, we've managed to make it to 45 minutes. Are we going to make it to 90? Was the big thing, right?
Yeah.
But no, not particularly. It was just the ball being close and me constantly looking out for you because the ball kept whizzing by you the first half.
I just don't go in. There's no movement out. We've got nothing. Like, we'll pass it to Sulemana, and I know we give Sulemana some criticism, but he got the ball and he did what he
his
could
own today.
Yeah, because he had to do it on his own because there was nobody else around him.
But
and then even then, he was running around the top of the pitch, but that top of the pitch was about 10 yards in front of our 18-yard box. Like, it was... I don't think we had a touch in their half for at least 30 minutes.
It sounds like that was the plan. Let's defend, and if we happen to win it by some sort of sheer coincidence or miracle, Sulemana and Dibbling, there you go do something.
Yeah.
The rest of us will stay here.
I mean, Matty Fernandez linked up with Agachugwu once in the first half and sort of dragged the whole team forward as he has, done the entire season. And I think it came to a half chance that then, City came back and hit us on the break. And I think that was the one where Flynn Downs made, maybe the most deliberate professional foul I've ever seen. It was effectively a clothesline. It was...
What's great about this is you thought it all happened in the first half, mate. Nah, this was all the second half. Because Flynn Downs' booking was in the 56th minute.
Yeah.
Chukwu's booking was right at the end of the first, which is why he got lumped off, right? And then because they were like, we want to keep it, and then straight away Flynn Downs does the most Flynn Downs thing ever and gets a yellow card.
Yeah,
after Rebo and stuff on, but that's what I mean.
It did its job, because if he didn't make that challenge, the City were breaking forward and they were against Jack Stevens and Bednarek, who would have been isolated in no man's land. So
the entirety of the live text, mate, is attempt blocked, attempt blocked, attempt blocked. Akanji missed. Matty Fernandez won a defensive free kick. Akanji was injured. Attempt missed. Corner. It is, whichever order you want to put it in, that was just the whole of the first half.
That said, until right at the end of the second half when they were properly peppering us, I also can't think of any really clear-cut chances that they had.
No, because again, it just kept hitting our players because we had 11 players in the way of the goal, and it worked. And they kept getting frustrated. And obviously, you had Kevin De Bruyne had 2 free kicks. The first one, obviously, he was just a little bit too high. So then he had another one straight away pretty much after that. And then he tried to correct it by going low and just hit the wall. But yeah, there was a lot. There was, I think, one point Foden had the ball quite a bit and then he had a go. But it was just the relentless pace of attacking moments from City. Yeah. But none of it felt like it was doing a lot. But that's only because none of them went in.
At one point, the ball went in the crowd near me from a shot or a cross, and Ramsdale moaned because the crowd gave it back to him too quickly. He was trying to time waste.
Yes, that was funny. That was it. It was a little kid that was probably so excited to throw the ball back to his hero, and you've got Ramsdale going mate.
The opposite of Joe Hart in the World Cup. Don't give me the ball. I just think as well, it's nice that we actually got a bit of luck for once.
I agree.
Even in the first half, again, a couple of VAR shouts. I'm not sure how much was made of them, live, but one of them even looked very similar to the Leicester one that we didn't get against Onuachu, where I think it was Dibbling was dragging on De Bruyne a bit, and that was good clearance by Flynn Downs, to be fair, after that, but not given. And then there was another one which I think was less of one, which is just another bit of a collision. But we got away with that. And then I think the clearance you're talking about, which would have been vintage Jack Stevens, he volleyed it off the line over the crossbar fairly late in the game, I think. Vintage Jack Stevens, that goes in. But I think when that goes over the bar, you think it's your day, maybe.
You're right with the luck, because any of those other days, Kevin De Bruyne scores those free kicks. I'm not being funny, and he has a knack for scoring against us anyway. So
that was just it. I'm there like, this is fine as a game plan, and I understand why you go into the game like this, but it only takes one moment of magic from City, and that's the entire game plan gone. And they have a £600 million plus squad of players designed to create those magic moments. Like,
I started doing the maths during half time to figure out how expensive their bench was in comparison to ours, and then the game restarted. So I quickly forgot, but I think I was saying that like Grealish alone is 100 million, and he's just sat on the bench. And then they brought Dooku on, who did change the game for him. And I'm sat there thinking, we've got a tactical battle between Dooku and James Bree, a £500,000 right back brought in from Luton by Nathan Jones, who hasn't played in a long time. He did all right.
He did all right. Yeah. No, I think there was only once when he got properly done that I can remember, and but yeah, I mean,
that's fair.
But this is
they still only managed 5 shots on target, so.
This is what's so pathetic from Ruben Diaz. Like, if you're going to have to moan about that, sorry, mate. Look at the value of your squad compared to ours.
Yeah,
that's the frustration, though, right? Like, it's going to be boiling over because you said, they only have 5 shots on target, Greg, but they did have 26 shots. So, like, they were just absolutely peppering us. It must get to a point where you're so frustrated because nothing's going in, and you could see that towards the end of the second half where they were just taking every half chance they had, booting it directly most of the time at Ramsdale, which would then give us some time to have the ball for all of the 30 seconds we'd have the ball, but that 30 seconds winds down the clock 30 seconons.
Was it in the first half, Zach, that we saw the Ole chance coming out? That was in front of us, right?
Yes. Oh, mate, it's just... It was nice to have, especially after like the weird press conferences, the weird press conference from Simon Rusk, the sort of last week to Leicester, it going completely Pete Tong. We kind of expected nothing. Again, my optimal outcome, the best possible outcome I could see from this game was 0-0. And we somehow achieved it. And whilst it's not a win, it is a point. City only got a point.
The Northern were on form, calling Haaland a rubbish Ricky Lambert.
Yeah.
Singing about Gabbiadini. We had Ole chance when we passed
Premier League's corrupt.
Yeah.
For the sheer amount of free kicks they had that were probably mostly deserved, but at the same time,
I mean that decision against Tyler Diblin when he beat the fullback and had a chance to run through on goal,
and then they spent absolutely ages to go. It's offside, but again, like the 7 minutes. That, to be honest, the more I look at it, the more I'm like, well, just the sheer amount of sheer amount of free kicks and corners they had probably made up that 7 minutes. However, besides the point, it did feel very, and obviously they just kept shouting for literally every little thing. But you're right. One of the good things about it is that they didn't get it this time, and I think it's a sad state of affairs that we put that down to luck rather than just like intelligence. Because I don't know if you guys watch the playoffs finals.
Bit of everything though as well. Like, it was body on the line defending a lot of the time. The amount of blocks, just pure blocks of just people just throwing their body in the way.
And it was hot today as well. And I know we don't really talk about the kind of environmental impacts on players, but like for today, considering it's a random Saturday afternoon, like, by the way, don't catch a cold in 20-degree heat. It's really annoying. But it's one of those things.
Sunscreen on, or my face would have looked like my shirt.
Yeah, I've realized looking at you could tell you were sat directly in the sun today. But like that would have had an effect on top of the fact that we've asked for a performance for 90 minutes all season. We finally got one. It just turns out that we can't do both attacking and defending at the same time.
But
unless we have 22 players.
This is what I don't understand. Russell Martin, semi-experienced manager. Juric is a very experienced manager. Neither of them could get it out of the players to do that, to put their bodies on the line, to fight for And this was Martin, who all the players loved him. So I don't understand. Like, fair play to Rusk in lots of ways, because he obviously has really got everyone buying on board, throwing themselves on the line. It's good to see that. And when Martin, I think, said at the beginning of the season, I want to make us really horrible to play against, that's sort of what I thought he was getting at. We were going to be not quite as dogged and actually try and play the ball, but off the ball, be resilient like that. So again, fair play that he's managed to instill that. It's just a shame it's so late. Because I do
even
be if not saying if he'd been in since the beginning of the season, but if he'd have stayed in since Juric.
It's interesting you say that, because like I don't know if you saw some of the conversation with Bednarek about like last week and him struggling to deal with the changes, and it almost seemed like a bit of a criticism of Rusk trying to play a bit more of a defensive style, and that suffocating him a little bit. But for me, that's even more of a kind of indictment of, well, he must have done a good enough job, because even if the players aren't entirely believing in him, they must believe in the game plan to work. And maybe that's just that Bednarek's been around the block and played in, at this point, 57 different types of systems since he's been at the club. But yeah, like considering, I thought after last weekend, I was like, well, that's it. Every single game now is a complete rout. And I know that he said he treated every single game individually, and then he spouted some more nonsense at the press conference that everyone kind of like put their eyebrow up at, myself included.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right, to be able to actually come out and, get a performance out of the guys. And I don't, whether or not it is a combination of all of their pride being like, you are going to go down as the worst team of all time, whether it's that Taylor Harwood-Bellis saying we perform better against bigger sides, and that being considered to be like an absolute joke to everyone who posted all of the losses we've had to bigger sides. If it's finally taken the last 2 or 3 games for personal pride to play a part in them playing like they did today, I'm fine with that, because it means that we are no longer statistically, and remember that's the most important, worst team of all time.
All right, I've got some other thoughts as well, but first, time for a quick break and a message from our partners at Zencastr. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description and learn more about Zencastr. Okay, so we are back. I wanted to briefly touch on, we've talked a lot about Russ going back to basics and becoming more defensive, but also can we take a minute to appreciate that all of the substitutions today made sense?
Yeah, I don't think any of us were unhappy with the substitutions that took place.
Leslie's on a yellow. We need to not be in that position to get him sent off. Let's bring in Joe Aribo, who plays in that position and can do that job. Great, that worked. Diblin has not been the best of the front three. I mean, he did as well as he could do with the cards he was dealt, to be clear, I think. But yeah, let's take him off and put the pace of Archer on. Good, makes sense.
Which almost paid off had he passed it properly.
Yeah. Let's bring on Stewart. Makes sense. Good. Look, when Stewart and Archer got on the pitch together, we kicked a ball up from the goalkeeper, and instead of the ball pinging around and getting picked up by a centre-back straight away, Stewart held it up, pinged it off to Cameron Archer, who ran through on goal and almost had a chance if he wasn't a yard offside. But almost, like, it looked better, like logical substitutions. And then Matty Fernandez had run his race. He was absolutely done for. So, right, bring on Will Smallbone for a few minutes to just shore it up for the last 2 or 3 minutes, or 7 for some reason, minutes. And you know what? Yeah, logical, makes sense.
Was there a big reaction when Matty Fernandez got subbed off?
He got a standing ovation. No, he got a standing ovation from the crowd, but everyone could see that it was a logical change because he was struggling, and it was right towards the end of the game, and it made sense. And you know what? At that point, the hope had built inside of me, and the delusion was like, Will Smallbone's going to come on and score like he did in the playoff semi-final. This is mad. Like that was the genuine feeling I had. And then I'm like, well, that might be a bit much.
I wasn't quite as insane, but I think as we've discussed before, like we've had our criticisms of Smallbone this season, but regardless of what our opinions are of him, some of us are more experienced in football than others. Like Oscar, you actually coach football. I don't count Football Manager as coaching football. We started off this season not thinking the world of Smallbone, and as I'm not a good football manager or a football manager at all, we have noticed that every single manager who has come in and taken over Southampton has seen something in him. So maybe our opinions are a moot point. Every single manager has played him at least once or twice. They see him as a versatile player. That does mean that he is not going to potentially get all of the 90 minutes, but it does mean that clearly there is something that they see in him that we may not see. Maybe it's because he is not as flashy as Fernandes,
I think
defensively shored up as Flynn Downs. But
I think it's what we've talked about before, where he is a versatile player and that he's a bit of a jack of all trades, and therefore he isn't as outstanding at any of those one things than the other. But for a few minutes as fresh legs, when Matty Fernandes is clearly struggling and the game is clearly not requiring that effort of dragging the team forward, he is more than capable of holding his own for a period of time.
Yeah, I get the impression personality and attitude is probably part of it. Seems to be quite resilient. Seems to be, this is what I want you to do. This, and he will do it like a good soldier. I think just the tricky thing for him is I think he'll go down and flourish again in the Championship because he's a playmaker. He's just not a good enough playmaker for the Premier League, and the rest of it he doesn't add. And it's not, he's still. Well, I don't know how old he is now. He's 25-ish. So he's still got time to develop a bit. But yeah, I think that's what's held him back. But yeah,
he's one of the very few players who, especially after last week, I was feeling a lot more down about it, it has to be said, but one of the few players I would like to see stay and do a job for us next season, because we know he can do it at that level. He did it for us previously. As mentioned, he scored that first opening goal in the semi-final playoff last year, and I mean, that night will forever live in the memory. So, yeah.
I think, so, we've got, two games left after today, and we've also, that discussion in itself, I know we'll probably have it towards more the off-season, but the absence of many players for Southampton is starting to creep into the back of my mind. We've spoken about Gromback, who apparently was out due to injury, but has not had a sniff since then. Ryan Fraser is actually contracted to the club, not that you'd believe that. Bella Kotchap, remember him? He was going to save the season. He's nowhere to be seen. Nathan Wood makes the bench all the time, but hasn't had an appearance in a couple months. There's going to be a really, really busy summer, and it's going to be interesting to see where we go. But I think that my optimistic note to end on today from me personally is that this was the best outcome that I could see, and I still thought we were going to get battered 5-0.
Yeah.
We ended up on 0-0. Fair play to the lads for doing it.
I felt in my heart like we were going to get battered 5-0 right up until about 63 minutes. Genuinely, that is still how I was feeling. I'm like, it's all going to go wrong here. They're going to have a moment of magic and score one, and that's it. That's our game plan done, and the floodgates are done because we don't have a game plan past. Don't let them score, because it certainly wasn't score as well. We didn't have the personnel we might not have the personnel in the club to do that, frankly, but we definitely didn't have the personnel on the pitch. So, it was...
And that's probably what would have happened if they had scored, but they didn't. So it's nice now because it gives us that little bit of relief for these last two games in that really there's nothing to fear. They're all playing realistically for, let's be honest, most of them will think they're Premier League players and want to stay in the Premier League. They've got to put themselves in the shop window now. Nothing to lose. Why not go out and spoil the party for Everton and Arsenal?
Yeah. We talked about it being pre-season, and now that's not even a joke. We genuinely have nothing. Like, we beat the record, it's done. Do we care about chasing down the second worst team in Premier League history and getting a win out of one of these two games? Probably not.
Even if we get, we win both of the next games, we will finish on 18 points. We will finish 3 points behind what Leicester have finished at now. So, at this point, you're right. It is completely a moot point.
Yeah,
absolute moot point. We could maybe, if we score 10 goals, we might overtake them on goal difference.
We go and enjoy the last league game at Goodison Park and hopefully spoil their party. Then we have a wonderful end of season party against Arsenal, where it's going to be a complete rubber match. Nothing is going to be left to play for. It doesn't matter. It's going to be another one of those crazy games like that 4-4 draw with Liverpool our last relegation season. It's just going to be nuts, and then we can start seeing where we go from there. But on the bright side, the 0-0 draw might be good enough news for them to send out the season ticket information this week. That's what they were holding on for, really.
And I will also, another little bit of positivity, Guardiola completely poo-pooed Diaz's criticism of us and said that we can play however we want. It's up to City to break us down, which is wonderful, wonderful news to hear. Maybe he'll end up here, Greg, in the future.
I don't think he has any like for our City whatsoever. I think that he hates Southampton with a passion. I don't think he enjoyed any trip to St Mary's.
Are you saying that when he takes his break from football, he isn't going to retire to Barcelona? He's not going to come to Harbour on the 6th, right?
You got to remember, mate, that he probably still, when he goes to sleep at night, pictures Moussa Gineppo lobbing him and lobbing Edison and ruining their quadruple. Like,
you're right. We're such a bogey team for City. It's so weird. Right. One party ruined. Let's ruin another. Let's go.
Right. Well, that is definitely all we've got time for. Thank you, everyone, for listening to, once again, statistically, definitely not the worst team in Premier League history, but the fact that the BBC had to put a headline out saying as much is almost as embarrassing.
And our admin. Don't forget our admin.
Yeah, thanks, Derby County. Yeah. Oscar, Zach, thank you very much for joining me. Let us know on the socials what you are looking to from the rest of this season, and if it is just it being over. Until tomorrow, when we'll be back with something. We'll see you next time.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.